Welcome, Mere Mortalites, to another round of the conversations. Today, I had a chat with my friend Dave Jones. This is his second appearance on the Mere Mortals, the first being about a year and a half ago on conversation number 54. If you want to know more about the podcast index and podcasting 2.0, today's chat was way more casual. So we talked about, are we entering the peak of social media, of coding and creativity, the link between the two of them, and why he loves open source projects so much, as well as philosophy books and whether you actually need to do a philosophy degree to understand these philosophy books. So all sorts of different things going on. If any of those interest you, please tune in. And here is Dave Jones.
I wonder what it is now. Let's see. It's
like
feeds
getting
with
close to
value
12,000 or
blocks.
something, could it be? Or
13,234.
there you go. Nice. I actually onboarded a couple of people recently at a Bitcoin meetup. There was one guy there who just started a show, and I was like, zoom in.
Oh, you have Bitcoin Bible study there in Australia too.
It's not Bible study, but it's it's kind of like a
Oh, you come on to Kyrin. There's a religious aspect to it.
Yeah, but it's I've met a couple of people like that at the meetups where it's I don't know, it's very varied. You can get some absolute whack jobs. Yeah, I'll say whack jobs. Some very, very intense out there people. Some people who are like coolly intense, like they take privacy super, super seriously, or they take liberalism or anti-government anarchy to a kind of next level, so you get a mix. So it's kind of like you just gotta like see what happens when you go to one of them. You can get
when I say Bible study, I kind of mean it endearing because it's a fun experience. It's not like it doesn't annoy me at all. I'm intrigued by the whole thing because you're right. You show up, and then there's always going to be at least one privacy guy who nobody, who like he doesn't want to tell anybody his name.
Yep.
And then there's always going to be the guy who doesn't really. He's been there for a long time. He doesn't really understand still, kind of like the basics. It's like there's these characters that you can kind of almost go ahead and bank on that are going to be at these types of things. But it's fun though. Like I didn't realize that like there's this lady here that I forgot her name is like Mads or something like that. She is evidently huge in the Bitcoin community. I mean, like she's a big deal. I mean, she does this like curriculum for schools and all this kind of stuff. And I had no idea she was right here in Birmingham. But it was interesting to see, show up and see these people that are like, oh yeah, hung out with Jack Dorsey at so and so. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. There's one guy here called the Wizard of Oz with Oz AUS, and he was running Lightning nodes. He said he was one of the first 100 people with the Lightning node. So he was full on early stuff and whatnot. And you know what's really cool? There's some people who are absolutely captured by value for value as well, and it's not and they recognize it outside of the podcasting sense, which is interesting. They're kind of coming through it through the Bitcoin sense. And so I was telling one of them, and I was explaining like, Adam Curry came up with this kind of model, and I kind of saw like the look of non-recognition. I'm like, oh, do you know who Adam Curry is? So then I had to explain podcasting 2.0. And it's just really cool. There's one guy here who he cooks a steak or creates like kebab skewers and stuff. He just does it all for free. And then just asks like, hey, just send some sats my way if you eat any of it. And he also tried this experiment doing it with soap recently as well. Brought soap and just a couple of QR codes.
I thought you meant he ate the soap.
No. But it was beef-based soap, like the tallow or the fat.
The tallow? Yeah, okay, cool. Rad.
Maybe you can if you get real desperate.
Well, everybody in Australia is either an engineer or a cattle rancher, right? So that's
what else we got here?
Or mining, or in mining somehow.
Yeah, mining as in the. It's funny. I have to really be sure nowadays to clarify, like mining engineer as in coal mining is what I used to do, and not Bitcoin mining.
It's not Bitcoin mining.
This is what I say, mining. I just chat with
which
them
would be a rad Bitcoin mining engineer would be a rad job.
That would be
a
cool
cool job.
Yeah, I don't have the skills for it actually. I wanted to get onto this. Do you think there's some sort of link between coding and creativity? And if you're not a highly creative person, coding isn't that suitable for you? Because I've been trying to learn it recently, and I've never said I'm a highly creative person, and I've actually struggled a fair bit to get a grasp for it, to find any passion for it, which is funny because I actually quite like language learning, which is, I feel it has a lot of similarities, spoken languages in particular. But I wouldn't say they're highly creative, because you kind of know what you want to say already, and it's just trying to figure out the building blocks to put in place to do that.
I heard Dave Jackson. This is probably about a year or so ago, and he was talking about podcasts and the different types of podcasters there were, and he was saying something to the effect of, I don't remember exactly how he laid it out, but he said, there's these different kinds of podcasters, and you have a podcast. You have the guy like Adam, who's the solo guy. I mean, Adam's the kind of guy that can show up and he can have three lines that he, like just a few prompts that he wrote out ahead of time on a card to just get his thoughts going in a certain direction. He can show up with those prompts and then just roll for an hour solid, of content by himself. And so like he's just that guy. He's gonna he's sort of like a driver, a show driver. And then there's this other type of podcaster who, and I think I fall into this category. Not to say that you can't learn to be one or the other, because you can, but like I do better when I'm naturally sort of a sidekick type podcaster, where he's driving the show and then I'm sort of playing off what he's saying, and then so I think it's kind of similar. I think that expands. I think that goes into all sorts of creative endeavors, and programming would be one of those too. But the reason I say that is because you have, just like you have artists out there who really they fall into those different camps where you have, and I do believe coding is art. I really believe that, and it's got an art quality. I'll say that. There's artists out there that will absolutely have novel ideas that are new, or at least new, sort of like to our era, and they're constantly thinking outside of they're just pushing forward with these new ideas, and they're frustrated by the box. But then you also have artists that get inspired by seeing something that somebody's done, and then they go do sort of variations on the theme, or they'll do something like that is in some other realm that they work off inspiration. And I think that the coders do that too. You have people who sort of really, really think outside the box and move. They're always thinking about moving something, doing something that nobody else has done. And then you have other coders, and again, I think I would fall into this camp as well, that take things, and they'll see a thing and then they instantly think, oh, I could do these 5 other things with it. And I think, I think you need both of those people. I think you need I think the world works best when you have a combination of both, because like just like you have people that came up with RSS, and then you have other people that come along and then they've moved to the next thing, because they keep pioneering something else. They've moved to OPML or whatever the next thing was for them. And then people come along and then they take that RSS and they stick it into every imaginable place you could think of. And so like it doesn't do to just have nothing but creative endeavors every single time, like that are new. You have to have this second wave that comes in and says, oh, cool, I see this, and now I have these 15 other thoughts that could string them together and do all this other thing. That's almost more important than the initial creation, is the thing that comes at the second wave that comes after it. So yeah, I think it is creative, but I think they're both creative, but they're just, it's funny how they fit in, they sort of fall into these ruts. And so to give you an example, the Freedom Controller that me and Adam started working on years ago, that started as just a clone of Dave Weiner's OPML editor. And so
is that like a product that anyone can use? Because I hear you guys reference it all the time, and how it used to kind of be like an index because you were doing aggregation and stuff. But yeah, I have no idea what that thing is.
It's a crazy piece of software that does like 50 different things. And so like it's not something that anybody would probably want to run. Let me take that back. You would want to run it, but it's really hard to run. And if I ever get to a point with the index where it's running well and it doesn't take as much care, I'm going to break off time to go back to the Freedom Controller and bring it up to date with modern technology. The problem with Freedom Controller is it's 5 years out of date. So it should be using Docker and things like this, because it always suffered from this immense complexity. The idea there, not to get too boring, but the idea there was that you're going to run your own server and you're going to have your own, basically your own little ecosystem. You're going to have a way to blog or microblog. You're going to have a way to read RSS feeds and keep up with the news. And then you're going to have an Instapaper like read me later type system that saves all the articles you read in a database. And then later you can go and search and find things and then export them out to an outline that will get you ready to do a podcast. And then you can rearrange your outline and your show notes and all this kind of stuff. And then on show day, once you do your podcast, you can publish it to an HTML page. And Adam still uses it today and it works fine. It's just really hard to install. It takes it's the install sheet, it's like teaching somebody how to install it is like, it's like, okay, first set aside 3 hours, because you're gonna have to go through this sequence of steps. Go to your DNS provider, do this, set up an S3 account, go to this, but it's just craziness. So, but I mean that thing started out as an OPML editor clone, and we got frustrated because at the time Dave Weiner's software only ran on Windows, and running Windows in the cloud was just a real pain. So we wanted it to run natively on Linux. So I started essentially just writing a clone of that software that did all the same things. And then as I'm writing it and it's getting close to like parity, feature parity, I'm like, you know what? I really want this thing to do this. And so I start putting that in. Okay, I see now that we have that, we can do this other thing. And before you know it, I mean, it's doing 25 things that the original thing never even dreamed of. So like, I think that's the sort of, honestly, I think that's podcasting 2.0, that project lives on that ethos. Is we have this thing of podcasting, this RSS based infrastructure, and we're just grabbing a piece over here and a piece over here and putting them together. Like a lot of this stuff is just not new. And there are some new things, that we've done, but a lot of it is just stringing things together that already existed and just didn't talk to each other.
Do you know if anyone else uses it, or is it just Adam?
The Freedom Controller? Oh, yeah, there's about a dozen people. Yeah, there's about 12 people.
Okay, cool.
Honestly, the bottleneck came with me because it was so hard to install. I was doing tech support on it all the time, and it just it's great. Yeah, there's about a dozen people.
No, that's super cool. Yeah, so it was. I always wondered what that thing was. It sounded like it wasn't widely spread, but also that it had a tremendous use case and amount of time and energy put into it. So
yeah, it has the notion of user accounts. So you can have 100 people on your server, and everybody gets their own system and their own ability to and you keep your own content. So the idea there is you have an Amazon S3 account or some sort of object storage, and when you publish things, or read things or generate a social outline or anything like that. It all goes into an object storage bucket and so you always own your stuff. If you ever leave, shut down your server account, all your stuff is just still there in your over here in your Amazon account. So that was the idea. But then we had this other idea that we were going to create this sort of like social network in a box. It was this was, gosh, 12 years ago now, I guess. And then maybe, 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And so the idea there was like, you could, we were going to build this social network where you have 25, let's just say you have 25 people running Freedom Controller servers. Anytime that I followed, it was very early ActivityPub Mastodon type system. But just it was built with RSS instead of activity streams. So you have the idea there was like if you have a server and I have a server, if I follow somebody that's on your server, now my server knows about your server. So there's this linkage that just happened. So as soon as I follow somebody on another server, our servers begin to communicate with each other, and they send a heartbeat between each other about once an hour to just say, hey, still there, still there, still there. So it forms this loosely aggregated network that just kind of is always keeping track of itself. Then if I go in and search for a user account, let's just say I wanted to follow Juan and he's on your server. If I type in his name, well, my server then sends out a request to all the servers it knows about asking for somebody with this name. And it comes back with search results. And like, okay, yeah, here's the guy I'm looking for. He's on Kyrin's server, and I subscribe to him. Well, then it just goes and subscribes to his RSS feed, which is just a feed of all his feeds, essentially, or his OPML outline. So it's a very like loose. We called it a sort of pull only RSS based social network, and it worked. It absolutely, and it still does. It still does work today. Yeah. But it's a victim of time. It needs some TLC that I don't have time to give it.
Yeah, well, it sounded in the latest podcasting 2.0, you were talking about peak social media, and I thought that was interesting because I'm definitely over it. I mean, I've been.
Are you there too? Do you think we've hit the peak?
I hope so. It's more a hope. I'm not enough of an observationist of human behavior and whatnot. Like I'm not a trend follower per se. So I mean, look, I didn't have any from 2013 through 2019. So I don't even know of the evolution of it up into today's modern a level where there's like 5-6 different big ones. I don't know what it was like. I had a taste of it when in late high school when everyone was getting Facebook, and so there was just one. There was just Facebook, which was kind of nice. And then everything else, phones started getting better. So then Instagram was the thing and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, like, look, my relationship with it's always been. I don't like putting stuff under my own name, which is why the Mere Mortals has been great, because I can kind of create accounts and it's all Mere Mortals podcasts and stuff. So even though it's me producing it, it's not, doesn't feel as self-aggrandizing, I guess, if it's kind of under my own name. And I mean, honestly, like that stuff is, I try and schedule it, I schedule it and just put it out there. I've heard lots of things of I'll respond to comments and whatnot, but it's more, I see it more as like if someone, it's like an update system rather than a communication nowadays per se for me. So that's just how I use it. And so for sure, if there's the hot new one, Nosta coming out or whatnot, I'm only going to use it as like here's my stuff, tune in if you want sort of deal, like notification. And that I don't think is great because that's kind of spammy in a way, which is
I feel I'm kind of the same way. So the Freedom Controller, we had this thing where it would automatically post. You're posting a microblog, and that microblog would go into an RSS feed and go onto into an HTML page. So you're posting your microblog, but then we said, okay, well, we want to post to Twitter too. So we integrated with Twitter, and it was like, this was, like I said, years ago, integrated with Twitter. So now you post a microblog, and it also, you have a default checkbox there where it's like, okay, do you want this to go to Twitter too? You say yes, and it goes to Twitter. So then later on, Mastodon comes along. It's like, okay, well, and then we add a Mastodon integration. Okay, now you're public, now you're going to both. Well, then the next thing comes along, and the next thing comes along. It's like, well, at some point you're just spamming everything.
Correct.
Like,
yeah.
It becomes promotional, and then you're like, well, and what happened with me is, I got to the point where I'm like, I don't even go to Twitter. And like with when I had a personal account, I've gotten rid of my personal account a few years ago. But even when I had one, I was like, I don't ever, my stuff gets posted there, but I never look at it. So this is a complete like waste of time. And so I deleted my account, and then I just don't do social media. When Blue Sky came out, I like to have some sort of account on these things so that I can go and check things if I need it.
I'm a lurker.
But as far as like, lurk. Yeah. I'll just lurk and see I'll see what some specific, I'll go there for a specific reason, and then I'm done. Like I don't scroll it. I don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think the problem as well is all of these things are getting diluted because there are now all these type of integrations. And so, the platform is meant to be kind of context dependent. And if I'm reposting the same thing to 5 different places, it's kind of probably not going to fit any of them. And not do well on any of them. So, I thought if you'd asked me 2 or 3 years ago, when I was first starting podcasting, I would have said, okay, yeah, I tried just putting out a podcast with no promotion or nothing. Of course, it doesn't get found out or it doesn't get discovered.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, well,
right.
What do you do? All the advice is, use social media, and I have been doing that. I would say the times that I've actually gotten traction though is the random one-off things in small niche communities. The other day, Chris Fisher from Jupiter Broadcasting sent in a massive baller boost on Fountain. That has done more for show visibility and discoverability than all the crap I've posted everywhere. So it's like, well, it's more, it'd be worth my time and attention probably just focusing on, 5 different people who might be likely to boost in a large amount, and that would do more for the show than whatnot. And look, I don't want to look at it that way, because that also feels it's just strategic. I think there's a lot of value in not being strategic about things. if you can get away with it.
There's a luck factor too,
Yeah, correct. And I think life can get rather boring and bitter if everything is about productivity, trying to make this thing happen, like every action being towards a final goal. I get bored with that. So it's like trying to find that mix of being strategic, but also, enjoying the moment for the moment, or, enjoying someone's company for their company sort of deal.
It's like, I don't think you have kids, but it's like going to, to an event with your kids, and you pull out your phone and you're about to video them, at this, recital or whatever this thing is. You're about to video them, and you're like, and you have this moment of pause and introspection where you're like, am I going to sit here with this phone and watch them through the screen so that I can then again watch them through the screen 10 years from now? Like, what am I doing? And then you just turn your phone off and stick it back in your pocket and say, this is an ephemeral moment that won't happen again. And I'm okay. And I'll take a picture and put my phone back in my pocket. And then I'll just let the memory of this thing live as what it is. inside of collectively of all the people that are here. I don't have to use technology to record this thing, um, and sort of like make it into like a mechanistic um, event. I'm going to enjoy this, which is what we used to do. We used to just simply enjoy things and take it in and have it be an experience. There's a really beautiful passage in C.S. Lewis's trilogy. I think it's the I think it's the second book of the trilogy, or no, it may be the first. I can't remember. It's the first. It's this out of the Silent Planet is the name of the first book, and he meets this alien race on Mars, and this alien race is this guy he's talking to is like he's talking about the memory of things, and the memory of a person uh, is is like they're not even dead, because the memory of that person literally keeps them alive in that culture. And that's the thing, is we don't take these we don't take our we don't take our like experience of a thing, and the technology I think dulls it down to where we don't take the experience of the thing and the memory of the thing as seriously as we used to. Me and my wife have been talking about this a lot lately, where um, we're trying to be more intentional about disconnecting from social media and from just technology in general. And we've been talking about how if you just go back, all this rapid progress in social technology has happened so fast that I don't think humans have been able to adapt properly. And I know that we have not. And so, you go from, my grandmother was born in she's dead now, but she was born in 1903. No electricity in the house. Drove her brothers and sisters to church in a horse and buggy. She lived on a farm. So in her lifetime, she died in, I guess, 90 no 2000 2001. So she had a long life,
Yeah.
but in her lifetime, she went from no electricity and horse and buggy and no car to man on the moon, social, internet, social media. That is a pace of progress that is unparalleled in all of human civilizational history. So of course we can't adapt to this. It's been way too fast. And we were talking the other night. We were taking a walk, and I was like, you remember how when we were? Do you remember how when we were young, we would, you'd be at school all day, or you'd be at work, and you would come home, and you there was no, you weren't social with anybody, like unless it was a neighbor who was walking their dog, or if you were a kid and your kids in the neighborhood or something like that you may run into, but you had this sort of like built-in respite to your day, where you came you came home from your social day, and you were by yourself, or you were with your family, and then uh, you didn't really re-engage with society until in writ large society writ large until the next day. So you had this sort of built-in ebb and flow where you were in and out of society, and it felt good, it felt natural, and you had time to sort of recuperate socially. Um, and now that's all gone away. We're connected all the time. We come home from a day at work or from a day at school, and it just doesn't stop. It's more people, more people, more people on social media and through technology, and it's real. It's the only word that you can use to describe the pace of modern society and the social connectedness is relentless. It,
Yeah.
it just doesn't. It won't let you go. You don't get any rest.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm wondering if this is actually affecting extroverted people more than it would perhaps introverts, because the problem with extroverts is they because they get energy from more people, they kind of get they're going to get trapped into it. Like they're going to get sucked into it more. I think introverted people, they probably have a more inclination to to know when there's a barrier or a boundary that's getting crossed, and it's like, okay, maybe I'll stop here, and I'll put away the phone, or I'll put apps at the back of the phone. That's what I've done recently, because I was noticing I was starting to use them in unhelpful ways, and that there is kind of that disconnect you can kind of turn off. Whereas if your natural inclination is for more people, is for more society, perhaps you are going to get trapped into it a bit more. Yeah, that's interesting.
Would you say you're an extrovert or introvert or somewhere
introvert.
In between? Or?
Introvert. Highly really? Introverted.
Okay. It's funny. There is this sort of. I think I'm a sort of in between, and like I go. The longer I love to be out and meet people and that kind of thing, but I don't realize that it's starting to get to me, and that I do need to take a break until like all of a sudden I'll get some downtime, and I'm like, you know what, the last thing I want to see right now is another human being.
Yeah.
So I think there's like this sort of in between. I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I'm definitely on the introverted side, but I've had to force myself to learn how to have brief flashes of extroversion, and not crazy like life of the party sort of thing. I'll never be that. Group settings.
Are you a fake extrovert?
A fake extrovert.
Because that's a thing.
No, I can't even fake it.
Okay.
Well, yes, I can fake it, but it's so blatantly fake that it's not fooling anyone.
Okay.
So yeah, no, it's more getting just comfortable. I've always been comfortable, I suppose, in one-on-one situations, but so much of life is not one-on-one situations. It's with friends or with family.
So are you only introvert in sort of in real life, or are you introvert on online as well? Like with things like this, does this because you interview a lot of people, so you must have some this capacity for pushing.
This is fine. It's I would say it's more we'll just get back to the definition. I think introversion is you lose energy from social interactions by and large. So after this, am I going to be more energized? It's probably about the same, if maybe slightly less, but it's early morning here. I haven't spoken with anyone today, so this is, if anything, maybe giving me a little boost. If I did, and
we've talked before. I mean,
Correct,
and we have interactions from time, so it's less of a like cold turkey type thing.
Correct.
Okay.
But getting on to, so you're correct. I'm single at the moment. One's baby girl was actually born yesterday or the day before. So
now is this the reason why you're modifying the podcast?
Yeah,
a little bit?
Starting to do some solo episodes. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, funny again. Linking to that, what you were talking about with the driver. I'm going to have to become somewhat more of a driver for some episodes, because it's just going to be me. Because I cannot do conversations or like a twice weekly. It's just scheduling alone is so hard for that. And then mixing in with like the boostergrams and stuff. Yeah, it gets harder. But yeah, so I forgot where I was going with that. Yeah, just I've always kind of inclined towards more one-on-one's fine. I enjoy one-on-one conversations. Yeah, they've been good. I know where I was going. I'm single at the moment, so I'm having to do more, like outgoing, meeting new people, that sort of stuff. And I can do that, but yeah, couple hours a day max, and then it's like no more people.
Right. Man, that was we were talking about my daughter and son. I've got 3 kids, and so like just noticing how, and not just with them, but young people in general. Not when I say young people, I mean like that 18 to 25 range, maybe. I guess I'm guessing at ages here. Like there's this. It doesn't seem like there's the dating thing is so weird now.
It is.
Like
yeah.
this mix of online, and so it's like I would hate to try to date in today's environment.
Yeah.
It seems like a nightmare.
I'm finding it more difficult than I did kind of like 5 years ago, for sure. And even,
really?
I suppose even close to like 8-9 years ago. Just those were the times I've been single, and yeah, it's I feel it's harder, feel it's a bit more work, but yeah, it's then
which that goes back to the technology thing though, which that and this applies as well. That it should be easier, but it's not. It's harder. Have you read anything by Jacques Ellul?
No, I was going to bring up your random ass book things because I've tried to find Alvin Platinga before, and I take note when you talk about a book on podcasting 2.0. I take note to write it down. I haven't found. I normally go to my local library because I read so much that it's just buying books would just be a huge expense, and
yeah.
I've looked up all of these ones, and I have no chance of finding them. I think this is why you get sick all the time. You're finding these ancient ass books. They're probably like dusty, have medieval plagues in the dust.
Yeah, I'm gonna end up with like syphilis or something off the cover. Yeah,
you're like the literary equivalent of the people going to Siberia and finding zombie viruses in the permafrost.
It's weird. I'm reading Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton right now, which is fantastic. It's a book that I should have read. I should have read this book 15 years ago, but I had a childish aversion to the title Orthodoxy.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to read a book that's called Orthodoxy, and but it was childish. I mean, like the book, it's not like that. But anyway, like we were at the bookstore last night actually, and there's this. I'm like, I've been really listening to an audiobook. I'm like, I really need this in print, and so I've got this. They had one copy there, and I have it in my hand. And so then we get up to the checkout, and my wife's like, aren't you going to buy anything? And I put it back. She's like, weren't you going to buy that book? I'm like, yeah, but I don't. It's too new. Like I want to like an old. I prefer to buy like old used copies off like Amazon, third party sellers or whatever. It's just like I like the old. I like it being old. But that book. But Jacques Ellul, there's a book that he wrote called The Technological Society, and it's, if you can find a copy, it's highly recommended. Like he's great. It's a dense book. It is dense. It's hard to get through. It's long and it's dense, but and some parts of it are tedious. But it's one of those books where it's like, you feel like you have to keep reading it because amongst 20 pages of tedium, there's one page that just kind of knocks your socks off. Yeah. And so you feel like you're like, man, I got to keep going with this book. And but it is really good, and that's one of his sort of driving. He wrote another book called Propaganda, which is also very good. But his sort of theme within technological society is that technology, and he calls it technique. And that's part of the thing with this book is it expands the idea of technology. We've pigeonholed technology into, a sort of electrical engineering ideas today. But his concept of technology is just technique in general. It's anything that can be systematized and categorized and quantified and, that kind of thing. And then boiled down to its raw efficiency. So the essence of technique is it is a thing at its most efficient. And so if you think about that, this technique or technology applies to all things. You can apply to the political process. It can apply to farming. Sociology. You can apply it to all things. And so the sort of like one of the fundamentals of this book is just looking at what has technology. What is technology? What is this thing, and what does it do to our culture? And why has it exploded? Why has it uniquely exploded over the last, let's say, 150 years? And he boils it down into 5 different categories or 5 different 5 different things that sort of all came together in the 20th century that allowed for technology to explode. Because you had these little bursts of sort of engineering technology here or farming technology here throughout human civilization, but then in the 20th century, it was just like all of a sudden, boom, everything went to technique. And part of his explanation of the process is that sort of technique is going to do its own thing, that it's only concerned about raw efficiency, and we're sort of along for the ride, because technology itself is a technique. And so that it's almost like, to use a cliche, it's almost like the Matrix in a sense. Like it's going to do its own thing, and you're not going to be able to stop it in a certain sense, because the search for that efficiency, that in and of itself is a search for efficiency. So it's kind of like we almost don't have a choice unless you just consciously opt out of doing some of these things, because if you just go along for the ride, what you end up with is not necessarily better. It's just more efficient. It's not better in human terms. We've got so much technology around dating and stuff like that. You would think with AI and with dating sites and social media and all this stuff, that like matchmaking and dating would be just so simple. I mean, like this should be like there's so much technology that employs this, but you don't end up with a better human experience. What you end up with is just efficiency.
Yeah.
You end up with matchmaking suggestions landing in your inbox, but that doesn't make your life any better. In a lot of ways, it can make it harder.
Yeah, it's kind of getting to what I was talking about before about strategy and kind of productivity hacking and that sort of stuff. It's fine for a little bit, but yeah, you get over it really quick. And it's like, wow, I've created an extra 3 hours in the day to now do more productivity hacking.
Yeah, straight up.
That's straight up endless cycle. This kind of gets onto philosophy, because I went through a little bit of a phase. I think it was last year. I had some goals to actually read some philosophy books, because I've always kind of danced around it, but I've never actually gone searching for the classics, I guess. And so I spent kind of a year and I'm trying to just seek out more stuff. So Nietzsche, Heidegger. I'd already read a lot of the Stoics, because that kind of falls into my just general mindset and whatnot. And what I came out with it's like more poetry than anything else. And you actually have a philosophy degree, right? You did that in university?
No, I don't.
No?
Philosophy. I never finished my degree.
Okay.
I was a philosophy major.
Gotcha. Is there, so one of the comments I got on when I was doing Heidegger, and I read the question concerning technology, and it's just this incomprehensible mess. I had no idea what he was trying to say. It's reasons for that is translated from the German. I was doing a bit of research into it, and his German was like the classic German where they're just melding words together, and so he's created like this Verbindung, Gemeinschaft, or whatever, and it's this 4 different separate words that they can then combine together to make this new word, which is meant to have a quality to itself, which might not translate into English as well. So there's going to be a bit of a translation difference. But barring that, it was still incomprehensible. I had no idea what he was trying to say. And this YouTube comment was saying, well, you can't just read Heidegger. You kind of need to have a full philosophy, like a course around it to explain the ideas. And I was going like, well, if it can't stand on its own 2 legs, I don't want to bother with it. I don't want to go to university just to understand this one book sort of deal.
Right. Right.
Do you feel like that's a lot of that, if you just were going to say like a philosophy book, a lot of it is like that? You kind of need a framework or a structure or other people telling you how to interpret some of these things? Because if it is, I'm not interested.
I think I think I separate sort of um, philosophical ideas from becoming an expert about the history of philosophy.
Mm.
And the history of philosophy has never really interested me that much, and a lot of it is trying to figure out what people were saying, and at the end of the day, you just kind of figure out what they were saying, and it's not you don't have a useful product at the end of it, I guess is what I mean. Product's not the right word, but um, I, I tend to I like the way that you laid that out, because you said something like that, you feel like it should just stand on its own, and I think that's what I look for as well. Like I try to, those are the things that stay with us, I think, is when you have a philosophy that's sort of coherent on its own. It sort of like exists as a thing that's comprehensible in and of itself, like a unit. And so one thing that I remember, so you mentioned Alvin Plantinga a while ago. It just popped into my head that there was a lecture by him that I was listening to one time, and it was at a university, I forgot where. And in the Q&A session, somebody got up and said, well, he was laying out his this new thing that he came up with called the evolutionary argument against naturalism. And so somebody got up in the Q&A and said, well, well, so and so, and I forgot what philosopher it was. So this philosopher said this and this and this and this, and what do you think about that? And Alvin Plantinga, who was the dean of the philosophy department at Notre Dame at university at the time, said, "Yeah, I've read that part, and to be honest with you, I have no idea what he's talking about." And at that, when I heard that, I was like, here's an eminent philosophical mind who is saying, I've read that multiple times and I have no idea what this philosopher is talking
Yeah,
about.
good.
Like, that made me think, okay, it's okay to say that. Like, it's okay to say that this guy is just a bunch. And if you read some of like Nietzsche's a perfect example
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Many of his books are just, especially towards the end, it's a bunch of incomprehensible mess. Like you don't know what he's trying to say. Yeah, because he could even have been in the throes of syphilis or whatever at that point, or whatever he ended up having. Like you don't know. So like going super deep. I've got a friend who's got a PhD in philosophy from Baylor and did his thesis on Nietzsche. He's a Nietzsche expert, and he will tell you flat out, there's 3 Nietzsche books that are of any value at all. The rest of them you can just toss in the trash.
Okay, yeah.
And
Which ones are those? Do you remember?
The one that he said was the one to start with, and the only one I've read is Genealogy of Morals.
Okay, yeah. I
don't know if
started
you've
with
read that or not.
Beyond. No, I've only attempted Beyond Good and Evil, and yeah, it was kind of just haphazard from what I gained. I didn't feel like it was a.
He said start with Genealogy of Morals, and after reading it, I know why. Is because it's a snapshot of Nietzsche. You really get a good overview of his thinking, and you also see what a complete nut job he was.
Nice.
like a racist, Uber
he was very
man.
angry.
I mean, just yeah. I mean, you get like in this one book really encompasses exactly who this guy was, and you see all the ugliness and all of the brilliance all at once. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good. I might try that again because I've kind of I was steered clear. It wouldn't. It's maybe not. I'm still interested in philosophy, but yeah, it's more. One, and I came up with this thing called effective philosophy, which is it's got to have some like purpose to it. It's got to be kind of usable in a sense.
Okay.
I like ideas, but ultimately at the end of the day, if I can't use them, I don't get enough pleasure from them just for the experience of thinking about it or of experiencing it. It's kind of like someone was telling me asked me the other day, just like what's kind of like your general principles or something like that. And I was saying, funnily enough, it's if I get down to it, it's kind of the scientific method, which is really weird because nowadays a lot of what is said to be science isn't really it. It's kind of the peer review, relying on experts, sort of statistics, which, statistics can be so manipulated or highlighted to prove certain things, even though, it's kind of like the black truth, if you've ever heard of that. It's a truth that's just not it's unhelpful because it's true in one sense, but in the larger sense, it's unhelpful.
Right.
It's kind of like so an example of that is the pay gap. Women earn 75% of what men earn, which statistically is true. But that if you then take from that, society is misogynistic, hates women, blah blah blah. It's like no. Like, my friend's literally his partner just had a baby, and she's taking a whole time off work. It's kind of like, of course she's going to earn less than him over the long run. And
I would I know what you're talking about. I would throw in things like that's a constant source of frustration, because you throw things in like the transgender debate and things like that. Really, it's not. There's no such thing. You have to break it down if you're going to talk about it a lot with any logic or rationality at all. You have to break it down into multiple pieces. It's not one. It's not a monolithic thing. Just using that, transgenderism is really probably about 5 or 6 different things all wrapped up into one thing called the debate. And it's not fair to anybody involved to talk about it. I mean, you have pre-puberty children, you've got adults, you've got boys, why are girls at such a high rate, you just got all these questions and you really have to take each one of them as a singular sort of thing and think it through. And like you, I think, there's all that's true for all of this stuff, and it's so sort of unhelpful to wrap it all into one thing and just say, here's this thing, and there's a left view and a right view, and that's what you get. It's just like, but that's so disingenuous.
And ultimately it comes down to the individual. The scientific method is about you being able to do the experiment yourself and see, does this replicate? Did I get the same results as what this person said? Like, that's the heart of it. And kind of like what you were talking about with technology, or having its own kind of driving force behind it, and we're swept along for the ride. I kind of feel that's the way as well, where because we have so much more ability to have statistics of groups, of the census, what are these people doing, how can we make the economy more efficient, or I just finished reading Animal Farm and doing a review of that. Perfect example of why not treating people as individuals creates the worst outcomes. And I kind of feel a lot of societies is moving towards that, where it's, in the dating scene, statistically, this person with these 5 characteristics, they like these things, should on a whole meet up with a person who has this, it's like I don't know, what do you call it? The tyranny of averages or something like that. You just end up with completely average, mediocre results for everyone. And it's unhelpful.
I feel like I've used this example before, but music matching algorithms. So what you're saying is the same sort of deal. Like Rush is one of my favorite bands. They're progressive rock. It's a trio. They have a singer with sort of a higher pitched voice. They're started in the 70s. Like, so you could take Rush and you could boil them down. You could like break them out into all these sort of properties. You can say, Rush has the property of trio-ness, and Rush, has the property of male singer, and Rush has the property of progressive rock drummer. And all these things, you could just say, oh, okay, here's all the properties. You can break it down. Let's just say you have 250 properties you could figure out about this band. And then, I've signaled to the system that I love this band. They're one of my favorite bands. Well, then, you can probably find you can Venn diagram that out and find this, maybe two other bands that fit this same bill. Let's just, King's X is one that pops up. Trio, great bass player, high pitch, sort of a higher end male singer, great drummer. So you have all these, everything's real similar, but I hate that band. So I mean, like there's this, you can do all the math and say, this is what this, here you go, here's this band, you're gonna love this. And I'm like, I don't like that band at all, and I can't tell you why. I don't know. I have no idea why. There's an intangible quality about it that I just don't, because it's art. It's not that. So that, that really gets back into what, you're talking about, the scientific method. The scientific method really applies well to the hard sciences. But when you get into the soft sciences, not even talking about art and those kinds of things, but if you get into soft sciences like sociology, anthropology, the scientific method just really, it's not applicable. You can't, it's not, that is a different thing altogether. And so, you can't do randomized control trials on, civilizations. It's just not, it's not that type of thing. So a lot of times, I mean, you take the scientific method and we sort of have this sort of like Star Trek ideal, where we're gonna prime directive this thing all, all over the universe. And like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, well, let's see if Elon can get his shit together and see what's happened with those Mars people. And
Are you a SpaceX guy? Are you like, do you keep track of that? I mean, some people are just nuts for that stuff.
No, not at all. Rockets are cool. I think I would have been fascinated in the era of men getting to the Mars and that sort of deal. I think I would have been wowed by that. But I mean, yeah, I can't remember having any like admiration or kind of a fetish over astronauts, like the hero astronaut sort of thing. I think that was
maybe we grew up in the wrong decade.
Yeah,
maybe if we'd grown up in the 60s, we would have been all geeked out for it.
Yeah, for sure. Even the kind of is it Apocalypse? What's the one where it's got Bruce Willis and he goes onto an asteroid and blows it up to save humanity?
Oh yeah, I forget. Apocalypse.
Yeah, Armageddon maybe.
Armageddon. That's it.
Yeah, I remember watching that and seeing that, but I was too young for it to kind of leave an impact on me. If anything, maybe it just made me admire mining engineers. Maybe that's why I'm a mining engineer. Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny.
You were talking about music. Is that where you kind of see a lot of the energy of kind of podcasting 2.0 actually going to in the next year or so? I mean, like just from the sound of it, like Adam's maybe going to create another shows, DJ type deal. Is that kind of going to suck a lot of their energy, I suppose, or is a lot of the momentum going to shift into that? Because I'm very interested in that as well, and I actually want to get on this artist who I've kind of been following for a while, and she makes kind of like this. Once again, the algorithm would never recommend it to me. This kind of like 80s retro synth music, and she's a Polish born, so her English has kind of got like a little bit of a hint of an accent to it. Like, there's no way you'd be able to recommend it to me. Right. And I like her music, and I see she's doing a lot of stuff in kind of NFT land, because it sort of makes sense that you can kind of compare them to selling an album, I guess, which is why you'd see a lot of musicians kind of being attracted to that. A whole lot of the stuff with being able to be a DJ, playing the music on your show, and then all of the kind of streaming or sats or the monetary benefit goes to that particular artist, and not just the artist, their splits as well. So the drummer, the bass singer, the bass player, the singer, the producer, this kind of ever expanding web of everyone getting a piece of the pie, I guess. So
Right.
yeah, is that kind of what you feel a lot of the energy, your energy, Adam's energy is going to?
Um, it just hit before I talk about that. It just hit me. I just remembered a thing you were saying about this Polish singer that you would never get recommended. There was this. Have you ever heard of the concept of like the Nintendo Jump? Have you ever heard of
Um,
that? Like,
is is this that speed glitch thing where it's I got into speed running. Have you heard of that?
oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So there was this one where I'm not sure if it was Nintendo. I think it was Mario, where this guy did this crazy jump and he jumped up this huge amount of levels, and they actually found out that it was because like an electron actually hit the kind of motherboard of his
No way.
PlayStation at this
Jeez.
particular. So it's no way it's replicable because everyone's trying to replicate this because he shaved off a couple of minutes or something from the speed jump by jumping up,
Okay.
and they figured out, yeah, if at this one particular time you're doing this one thing, one electron hits this motherboard, switches it from a 0 to a 1, bam, you get transported up 50 levels
That's
into the
fun.
air. So
No,
I'm
no,
guessing it's not
that's wild.
that.
No, it's not that. No, it's like it's this idea that so Super Mario of why Super Mario Brothers, the original, was so successful is that when you with Mario, when you jumped, it was like the most perfect, satisfying jump. It popped off like if you're just thinking about the Mario character, when you hit the button, it responded at the right time. It popped off the floor in the right with the right momentum. He hung in the air for the right amount of time, and then he landed it. It's like everything about that jump was just and the noise, the boom,
Yeah.
everything about it was so satisfying to something inside of of humans that's why that it was that game was so
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
yeah. And like you can't replicate that. You can't replicate that. You can now. I mean, you could sort of like figure out after the fact, but it's a thing that's like a quality of all these of like music and that kind of thing is you don't know in advance what this thing is like
It wasn't
because that's
intentional. They
one.
didn't design the game
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
jump. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, that just kind of came through my head, but um, I think while we're sort of going down, I think we all love music. I think that's number one. I think it's just sort of natural. I mean, Adam, clearly Adam's been a DJ forever and has a love of music, and a lot of people within the project community, 2.0 community, are musicians, and so there's a heavy musicianship already within the project just in general. So I think everybody already sort of like bends that way, but then um, also I think there's a different component too. Podcast, like if you want to say the podcast industrial complex, sort of this built up podcast and system that it already exists amongst the different hosting providers and the way that everything's monetized and that sort of thing. It it tends to, and this is not a criticism, but it tends to push back against change, and not even not overtly really. It's just a natural sort of pushback that you get, a resistance to change. And so I think with music, I think we sort of there's a little bit more freedom there because the podcast industrial complex itself is really not interested in music or has not been in the past. It's not. It's been music has been a source of fear for the podcast complex because of licensing,
Mm.
lawsuits and licensing things and that of that nature. So a lot of podcast hosts don't even allow you to put music on there because they just don't want to deal with that whole legal problem. So I think that may be why that we're kind of doing more stuff with music now is because it's a creative outlet. We can do these things, and now that things like Wavelake are popping up, and musicians are coming in and putting their music up. Like I think Adam said recently on a show that we did in the last few weeks that there are music artists that are getting their rights back, and they don't have a place to put they don't have a place to put their music. They're just throwing it up on Spotify and hoping for the best. And like when you have that, now that's a perfect time where you have people who own their own rights. There's no legal issues there, and they can come in and they can put it on Wavelake or Disctopia or, one of these podcast hosts or SoundCloud. And then now you've got this sort of fertile soil that you can push the envelope with. Like there's tags and things that we want and stuff that we want to do within podcasting that's going to be very difficult or it's going to meet with a lot of resistance. I mean, hell, we can't even get half these hosting companies to do chapters and transcripts. So because of dynamic ad insertion, well, you don't there again. Dynamic ad insertion is not a problem with music. I mean, nobody's going to drop an ad in the middle of a song.
Yeah.
So that's there again. Now you've got sort of this pure, creative thing that you can do where it's wide open. There's no holds barred. We can do crazy stuff like we did on the last episode, where Adam just drops a song in the middle of the show, and we try to figure out how to suck the value block back into our show so that temporarily that artist can get streaming payments, and then everything goes back to normal. It's like no podcast hosting company would touch that with a 20-foot pole. They don't want to be anywhere near that kind of stuff. So I think it's that a combination of the two. Everybody loves music, and then also like it feels more free. It's good because we can take the things we learn from that and bring the good parts back in, or not the good parts, but the parts that apply, like remote, the whole idea of a remote item, like I'm going to have my feed, point to something that's in some other feed over here, for a moment in time, like that whole concept that will come into podcasting, the more general podcasting space. But right now it's really helpful for music. And so that's kind of the first place it's showing up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys create clips all the time, for example. So it's possible to, if you're clipping my show or any other show, you were clipping Pod News Weekly review. There's no reason that you couldn't have, for that small section as well, done the exact same thing. So yeah, you can see.
Yeah, why don't they get some sats? Yeah, they deserve some streaming payments for us doing the clip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because I wouldn't even say I'm that obsessed with music like everyone. I like it, but it's not. I've never been into vinyl. I've never. I wouldn't say it's a huge component of my life. And yet when Abel and the Wolf, so this is Abel Kirby and Sir Spencer, were kind of being the really front runners of trying to create an album and put it into an RSS feed. I listened to, on Christmas Day of 2021, I listened to that album as it came out. Like, what the hell? I've got so much other stuff to do on Christmas Day, but I spent the time to listen to that. So yeah, I think it's maybe not even just the music itself. It's the whole concept of just people, just a better system, everyone getting a piece of the pie, or just cutting out the middlemen. I think everyone's kind of sick of that. Maybe it's just the pain is so obvious in the music industry that it's just, you get people who are really motivated to fix it or just to do anything different. Much like I was very, very motivated when I first came into podcasting 2.0. I think it was about 2 years ago now. Yeah, maybe two.
It's been a while,
yeah. And I was super motivated because I was kind of like we were talking about with social media. The only way I kind of saw myself improving the podcast was to shill it to the crazy nth degree. And I wasn't comfortable doing that. I didn't want to do that. And then I found like, I can actually make it better by doing, these additional things, by putting transcripts in, which I've only actually started doing recently. But chapters and whatnot.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there's I think when the pain is great enough, the motivation also is kind of the at its peak as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that. So much of I think we need to stop thinking about scale so much. That's one thing that I think is another lesson that we're learning from the social sort of peak social media. We tend to think that, and we're all guilty. And when I say we all, I mean, programmers are terrible at this. We build something and we're like, yeah, but does it scale? Yeah, but how's it going to be when there's a million users? Well,
Mm.
you know, there's a 99% chance that this thing that you're building is never going to have a million users. Like this, that is not. If that day ever comes, you'll figure it out. Okay, and I mean, like, there's no there, and you'll at that moment you'll say, okay, well, we need to re-architect or whatever. But I think we need to just in general stop thinking that, oh, there's going to be this thing that replaces the music industry, or this thing that replaces social media, or this thing that replaces books. Like, there's just we tend
The killer
another,
app, the yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, you don't. We I guess it's a matter of redefining success in a way that doesn't is not so grandiose.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to kill the music industry, but that shouldn't be the point. The point isn't to reinvent music. The point is to serve this thing. Say, okay, look, I see a thing. I see podcasting, and what is it? It is a functioning system, a fully functioning system where I can put media files in a simple, easy way on a hosting provider for a few bucks a month, and uh, all of a sudden, millions of people get to receive that media on their device and listen to it in, like, as soon as I post it. That's what podcasting is. That and then if you just say, okay, well, if it's just media, we could deliver anything that way. I mean, this podcasting, if you boil it down to its component parts, is just a media delivery system, and it's fully baked. It already exists. All the pieces are already there. So if you think about it in those terms, you're just saying, okay, now I have this group of people over here that are not being served by the music record label industry. They're either discarded, or they don't want to participate, or they don't make enough money, so they think it's a waste of time. So that group of people, it's not the entire music industry. But it's substantial. It may be, let's say that group of people legitimately constitutes 50,000 artists or musicians, to be conservative. Well, okay, now you've got 50,000 musicians who have a media delivery system that they can now push their media to listeners and get paid for it. And so I think I think we have to stop thinking about things in such grandiose terms, because I think those days are over. I think they never really were there. It was a sort of mirage of Silicon Valley VC money that thought, okay, well, we can disrupt everything. We're Uber. We're going to disrupt taxi drivers. Which really they were just fancy taxi drivers. We have this thing of this disruption mindset. I don't think it ever really was true. I think it was always false. I mean, the same record industry exists today that existed, 50 years ago. And so, like, nothing's going to upset that apple cart, because the fact is there are a few artists that make lots and lots of money that way. And when you have that in place, that's not going to change. But that's the 5% at the top. There's the other 95% that are willing to try all kinds of things. And so let's just build a system that they can use. And this is one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I get sort of motivation from thinking that way, from opting out of. Some people get excited about building the next, huge monumental disruption. And that's too much pressure, man.
Yeah. Well, when another thing that attracted me in was you guys would say, if anyone comes out of this a billionaire, we've done it wrong. That's not the.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be such a concentration of it, because it's kind of meant to be for the masses. Whatever it is that's being built. And I was chatting with this guy when I was saying, value for value, the concept is expanding outside of podcasting, and it's, Bitcoin people are talking about it, and I hope to hear it outside of that as well someday. And I was chatting with him about this, and we're relating it to music, to book writers and all sorts of people, and asking, and he was just saying, he was kind of like, I just don't see it happening in terms of the large scale, it becoming everywhere. This is the thing to do. And I was going, I agreed. And the case study is still the sample size still is very small, because the only person I know about really doing it solely through value for value is Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. And, Adam Curry is an outlier to the max. There's not anyone really like him. So how many people could make it even into completely a full-time gig relying just on that? I think the jury's out on that. Me personally, I'm willing to try it, and I'm willing to spend a fair few years trying to do it. But it might just be, it never reaches that bigger level where everyone is doing it and they can sustain themselves just through that. It might just be, it's nice. It's a nice source of income or something like that, but it's not the sole way or method and whatnot. And it's interesting seeing other people like Jupiter Broadcasting, Chris Fisher, I mentioned him before, where the advertising's taken a huge hit over this last 6 months, and it's kind of like, well, what can value for value replace it? Can it be a part of an overall arching strategy and not the one and only sort of thing?
Right. It's, if you take No Agenda, that's a show. I'm trying to figure out how to lay this out, because if you take a show that's already got it's already got a lot of advertising dollars coming in, and the audience that's what they're expecting. You see, you have growing pains when you go through that with value for value, because what the natural sort of, I guess, thing to do is to come out with like subscriptions or something to say, hey, we need monthly support. And a lot of times that's not super transparent of why you're doing that. So you say, well, $5 a month helps us with the advertising downturn. I think the beauty of No Agenda, and really all of Adam's shows, Podcasting 2.0 included, is that it's radically transparent. So you exactly, the audience knows exactly how much money we get. You can hear it. And, there's, I think Chad Farrow went through, and was it Chad?
I thought it was Dreb.
No, it's not Dreb. No. I think Chad went through and added up. He listened to every episode donation segment and was just posting the dollar amount and the sad amount of every single episode, almost like a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And which is fun to watch, actually, to watch him do it. But so that's that sort of transparency. There's trying to figure out how to express this.
It was Chad. Yep. Chad.
Okay. Yep. I thought it was. So there's, maybe this is the best way to do it. There's key components to the value for value model in podcasting. To just keep it simple. Um, and a lot of times people don't do they don't do the full stack.
Yeah.
And that it really is, Adam and John figured this thing out over 10 years. It took a while to figure out what exactly the stack looks like. And what it looks like is that radical transparency. People can listen and know exactly how much money's coming in. They listen, they hear other people and what they're donating. That's a key. They become the feed. They give you feedback, which you incorporate into the show, so that your listeners become the content for the show, and not in that gross Silicon Valley way where it's like, hey, you give us your content and we're going to monetize it. It's they literally, your audience literally is the show. They become part of the show. There's that part of it. There's producing the show for free on a schedule that never varies. There's all these pieces, and a lot of people they'll do one or two, but they won't do it all. And so they'll have limited success. Now all of this depends on having killer content. You have to have something people want to listen to.
Yeah.
And that really, so with a guy like Adam, who's a pro, has been doing this since he was 19 years old. It's literally in his blood. I mean, he knows how to make a good show. And so his audience is going to, if I roll out there and try to do a show about, weird books that I read, I'm going to have 10 people that listen to it, and I'm going to get $5 a month of donations. So that's just something that I'm not built that way, but he is. And so there's people, and I would put Chris Fisher into that category. Chris Fisher has become a very, very good podcaster, and he could go full value for value. He could do it. He could flat out do it with a show. He could take a new show. He's done it with Office Hours,
Yeah.
Now,
Bitcoin Dad as well.
Bitcoin Dad. So but I think it really matters how you build a show from the beginning. If you go into it and you tell your audience up front, this show only works. We're only doing value for value. If you don't donate, the show goes away. That's we're putting ourselves in your hands. When you do that, it's sort of you get a different relationship with your audience. A lot of podcasters they don't go all the way because they're scared. And I understand. I get it. I totally get it. And it's hard to retrain an audience after the fact. But it's, the other thing is just diligence. Like, with podcasting, it's just sticking with it. I mean, like, you've stuck with it for a long time. Yeah. And just not stopping. So many people just stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I've covered a lot of this in the Value for Value podcast. If people wanted to dive, I suppose, more into the kind of philosophical aspects of that as well. And you can even see it in this show. We didn't particularly do live episodes, but I was noticing, because we were pre-recording a bunch, and usually I would give myself a fair chunk of time to do the editing of that through the week. We had to reach a point where it's like, we have to do the live show just so we can kind of do the Boostergram section. And now, thankfully, this kind of worked out because it saved me doing a whole lot of editing for stuff which I don't think was actually making that much of a difference anyway. So it was a good change anyway. But even this one, I'm not going to do it on this with you here now. Is it possible to do it? Have just once a week and then interim episodes, and then it's only on that once a week episode with the acknowledgements? Is that enough? There's a whole lot of things that need I suppose thinking about. And in the second season of Value for Value, I was kind of going through a lot of like the techniques that other people were using, such as the kind of like advertising of putting it at the front of the show or at the end of the show, of that kind of the sad puppy type sort of motivation versus more perhaps something that's more positive, negativity plus positivity, which is more likely to do it. I'd have all sorts of questions for Adams of stats around value amounts less than the cutoff. When they started introducing cutoffs, did they start getting less dollars coming in of people, only donating $20 because, well, they're not going to get read out on the show anymore, or that sort of deal. Right. So, yeah,
there's the number psychology there is, that's it's weird.
Yeah, the numerology as well. Yeah, huge.
It's not what you expect, because you expect that when. Well, I think what we naturally expect when we go into it is, okay, if somebody donates $500 on the show, and people hear that they donated that much, they'll be like, oh, these guys got a bunch of, that's a big donation, I don't have to donate. But that's really not how it works. I mean, it's sort of the opposite. Here, when somebody hears that another listener donated $500, they become more likely to donate as well, because they're like, it's like I don't want to say shame in like a freeloading sort of thing. I don't necessarily think that's it. I think there's excitement when they hear that. I think it's confirmation that it's a good show.
Yeah.
That it's worth paying for. I just think there's a lot of psychology there, and podcasting is and podcasters are way too secretive, man. Like, people don't want to know how many listeners. They don't want you to know how many listeners they have. They don't want you to know how much money they make. Nobody talks about any of the stuff. They're all like, they want to give seminars, but they never tell you any details. It's like, okay, well, I mean, whatever. I don't, that's that sort of radical transparency. I think that it's sort of a hard psychological hump to get over, but then you get over it and you're like, oh, it's fine. It actually is, it's better this way.
Yeah,
it works.
You mentioned that twice. So what I'm planning for the third season of the Value for Value show, which I should be doing probably this month. I'm planning on doing kind of a one-off episode on the mere mortals, where I'm going to do kind of a comparison between Bitcoin, podcasting, and value for value, because I think there's a lot of overlaps between all three of them, and kind of like how they merge together. There'll be a segment on that, which is the radical transparency. That's why Bitcoin works, because it's an open ledger. Anyone can get in and look, and it's all in there. And once again, this kind of weird dichotomy of going to a Bitcoin meetup and there's privacy people there for a fucking thing which is the most radically open, transparent. Like, what the hell?
Right. Yeah.
So it's, how do you get those two in the same room and not have cognitive dissonance and their brain exploding, sort of deal?
For sure.
And
you can't shoehorn that in too.
Yeah, and I think that's why podcasting is also so attractive. It's there are aspects of it which are completely, they're more radically truthful, because it's just people talking, and they don't have, they can swear if they want to, because it doesn't matter. There's no TV corporation, whatever, saying, oh no, you can't use that word, but oh yeah, you can actually use the word. I always hear this in there's this song by I think it was Major Lazer, DJ Snake, and Mo, and it was really, really popular a couple of years ago. And they changed the lyrics from fire a gun to enter the sun, and it's just to be able to play it on radio. And I'm like, fire a gun? Are you kidding me? They had the really popular band Foster the People had a very popular song about a school shooting. It was about a school shooting, and they didn't change any of the lyrics, but because for whatever reason, that one that one never got altered or anything.
What's the Radiohead song? There's a Radiohead song about a school shooting in the UK, right?
Yeah, potentially. I don't know that one. But yeah,
it's gonna eat me up.
The overlap between all those three, and then I'm planning on kind of doing a breakdown of the value for value and being like, each week I will focus on one of these little slides that I'll present in a big presentation and kind of focus in on that. And so that's just kind of something to look forward to in the next month.
I think there's something magical about doing a live show.
Yeah, and I'm planning on doing it live as well. Yeah.
I love listening to you guys live, and man, I don't think there's anything wrong with editing it after the fact, to clean things up and that kind of stuff. But when you do a show with Adam, you're gonna sit down, and you go, he's like, you ready? Yeah, go. Boom. You go all the way through, and then it's like, okay, we're done, and you're out. I mean, like, it's what you hear in the podcast player 99.9% of the time is exactly the way it went down. There's no edits.
Yep.
There's, the only time he edits something out is if there was 10 minutes of dog barking that somebody had to calm down. That, other than, which is a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
But there's something about that way of doing it that transmits to the audience. There's an energy about live things that transmits to the audience, and they can feel it too. And I think it makes a difference. I really do.
Yeah.
I love listening to live shows.
Yeah. I'm hoping to do that one at a time which is more available for other people in the world as well. So doing a live one in the mere mortals in the evening, which is kind of the time that Juan and I could both, mostly him, settle upon as a regular thing. And then I might do this next one in the morning time. So if other people were interested in that was actually why I was and this may be an interesting topic to talk about as well. So at the moment, I don't know how many people actually have the value for value stuff in their RSS feed. It wouldn't be that many, right? It would be 1,000. Do you reckon? If that, I mean, there's all the 3Speak feed, so there's probably
the 3Speak feeds,
several thousands, I guess. But in getting rid of them, there wouldn't be that many with the value for value actually in their feed, right? So, for example, I have Buzzsprout as my host. I can't do it with them.
Right. You can through their support if you want to do it that way. You can have them.
I suppose so. Yeah. But then I'm, for example, I'm going to
not through the UI though.
Yeah, and I want to chuck on you for so the new system. I don't know if you've known this as well, but for this show now, I've basically done it so 10% is going to kind of like devs. So I've got Curicaster, Podfans, Podverse. Who else am I missing from that? Another dev, you and Fountain, all kind of making up this 10% split. And then 30% is going to go to me, 30% to one, and 30% to like a joint one for us where we can use that for satvertising, so promotions and stuff. And because one's not going to appear on the show, I'm going to throw you in as a 30%. And if I was trying to do that through Buzzsprout, I would be emailing them every second week,
all the time.
Being like, can you do this? Yeah, can you do this? So,
so you do it through Podcaster Wallet right now?
No, I was doing it through that, but once again with Podcaster Wallet, you can't do episode splits.
Episodes. Yeah,
so I'm now using Fountain, which is great. I really enjoy it. It's got the added benefit of boostergrams being able to pop up on Fountain from different areas. So if someone boosts in from a Customatic, it'll pop up in there. But it is still hard, I guess. And
it is.
Here's another one. So the value for value show, I'm going to move on to Blueberry because they have now the ability to do live, and they also have the ability to put in value splits for the episodes and whatnot. And this is why I was asking you.
At the episode level?
I believe so. I thought they did.
Okay.
I'll have to check that.
Cool.
And this is why I was asking if I could get the RSS feed, which is now, it's so complicated, but it's like, I've got the RSS feed on Casterpod, I've been using Fountain as the kind of shim to be able to do all the episodes. That's where I episode level splits for the value for value, and that's how I did that one with like 25 or 26 splits in it. I can't remember how many.
Right.
And I kind of want to migrate all of that over onto Blueberry, but to do that, I would need kind of your version of it, so that Blueberry could maybe ingest in all those current value for value splits. I don't know if they'll be able to do it. Probably not, but it's worth
So
me trying.
You're saying that you would need some sort of export.
Yeah. I might just contact them and see if they can even do that. But if I can save myself having to, it's chatting with Sam Sethi about the early internet days of when he was like, it's HTTPS and then colon and then // I'm so doing that with copy and pasting lightning addresses from like phone to desktop and misspelling, like this one was an O and it was a 0 instead, and I was just doing it manually because it was quicker than copying and pasting. It's so like that.
It's fun. That's a unique thing, but it may not be that unique going forward. I mean, I think it's worth building that. Like, so what I mean is, I think what we could do is you could say, okay, you could go in. I think what you could do is you go into Podcaster Wallet.
Yeah. And then just
you could say,
updated export. Feed or export or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to export. I want to export my feed so that I can take it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then what we would generate, we would take your XML feed as it stands. We would just look at your RSS and then export that out, but then add the value tags in to all the episodes as we go sort of like through the export. And so you would end up with an exact copy of your RSS feed with all the value blocks put in.
Yeah, I just thought you would have had that anyway, because when other people are coming, so let's say, I've got the value for value show, I've used Fountain as kind of the shim to put in all of the episode level splits and whatnot that I wanted.
Right.
I assume they send that data to you somehow, and I figured you were already constructing a feed from that with all that information in it. No,
it's purely a database thing. It all just happens in the database. And so Fountain pings us and lets us know, hey, Kyrin, just put this. There's two things going on there. They send us, they communicate with our API and say, here, Kyrin, just put this value block into this episode, and we just update that record in the database.
Yeah.
But then there's the other reason that it's never come up is that most people don't use episode level splits.
Correct.
Most podcasters just set one thing, and they just set it at the feed level and they're done. You're in the minority of people who are using the episode level splits. So it's not really kind of been a thing,
Yeah. But I suppose there are other hosts now, kind of, Conchax is now doing it. I don't know. Wave Lake, I guess, are they their own podcast hosts or music hosts? So that's kind of built into it already, so you don't need to do anything. So and
they only do episode level splits. They actually don't do anything at the channel level.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So they're unique in that regard.
Yeah.
I think I'll definitely build that for you. Give me a. I don't know what your time frame is. Give me.
It's not a big deal. Honestly, it's probably even me getting too far ahead of myself, because I'm not sure Blueberry, when I import it, will update all of it anyway. For example, when I tried to import another show, I found out they didn't import, like JSON feeds and other stuff that I had created. So
I wonder if you could send it to their support team and have them just do it internally.
They will hate me. They will absolutely hate me.
No, that's what they do. No. That's, you're a paying customer. They'll do that support for you.
They'll love it.
Yeah, they have a good support team. Yeah, they get a kick out of it.
Oh, geez. Yeah. But yeah, it's I mean, it is very, very cool seeing that, and like just being able to support other other devs as well. I thought there was one more. I can't. Should probably look it up.
Is it Castmatic?
No, because I've kind of only done it for ones that I personally use.
Okay.
So it was kind of
Podcast Guru, maybe.
Yeah, I've got it up quickly. So it was Stephen Bell, Sam Sethi, Mitch Downey, Podfriend, Martin Muritzen.
Oh, Martin. Okay.
Yourself, The Index, and then Fountain for 4%. And so that took me up to
cool. Thanks.
10%. Yeah, so every time you boost in, you're boosting yourself.
But the good, you know what the cool thing about Fountain is that chart, man. You can game that chart. Like if you want to send somebody to the top of the chart, you can throw a couple 100,000 sats and go straight to the top.
Juan and I were discussing this on an episode. Geez, I think it was when they first came out with the charts, and it was that I said to him, like, this would be a real easy way for me if I wanted us to be on the top. All I would have to do is create an account, chuck some sats in, boost myself. I get all the money back essentially, apart from 4% that goes to Fountain, 1% to the Index, and that is like a huge easy way to do self promotion. And and not that I was actually even considering doing this. I was just saying, hypothetically, this is possible. And then one, of course, was like, yeah, but people tend to find that out as well if it's not a genuine thing, because you can kind of do this sort of stuff anywhere. So it does have like this level of, even with programmable money and whatnot, it's very hard to eliminate bad actors wanting to do. It's not illegal, self-boosting, right, but it is kind of, on the ethical spectrum, it's a bit iffy. Very
well,
iffy.
If you think, no, I feel you, but you think about the one redeeming issue here is that you have, in most systems, you get that spamminess for free, and so like at least when you're sort of spamming your way to the top and in the Fountain charts, at least Oscar's getting paid for it.
Yeah,
what I mean?
There's a 5% cost to it.
Yeah. So it's not a free deal, and you're sort of paying him for the privilege of spamming his system, and if he sees it enough times, he'll take some action. He's gonna, it's like it's not a big deal to. And it also it causes the rest of the sort of leaderboard to have to kind of up their game too, if to get into. There's sort of a market hand that goes on there. I see what you're saying, and you're right. It's just interesting to think it all the way through and say, okay, well there actually is, there's some benefits there too, where when you have a pay thing going on, because we see that we have the Index is free, so it's a constant spam battle, man. And it's like I've had to restrict free email accounts from API signups, so I've got a huge block list now of Gmail, Outlook.com, Hotmail, all these free email hosting providers, just playing self-defense because these spammers sign up for an API account and then just immediately start hammering our servers.
And what are they trying to do? What's their point? Like what?
Most of them are looking for email addresses.
Yeah, okay.
They're trying to harvest email addresses, so they'll get into API and then try to scrape all 4 million feeds out of the API by going one after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
And but they don't realize. I mean, we don't serve email addresses in there anyway, so it's all a waste of time.
Yeah. It's interesting. This almost brings us back right around to the start, where when I was trying to learn some coding, and I got I was learning some Python. I kind of got a little bit of the terminology of how things are structured and whatnot, but I never got deep enough to really be able to create anything more than just not copy and paste. I was writing it out physically, but I created like Pong or some like tiny little game on my computer. And all of this was kind of in the purpose of potentially being able to save myself time in the future, mostly for podcasting related stuff. For example, if I ever wanted to move over from Buzzsprout, it is going to be a tremendous pain in the ass to try and reconstruct all the JSON files, because they're not going to want to host all of my images like they currently do. If I'm moving over to another host, all of the images for the chapters,
for your chapters?
Yes.
Yeah.
That all of that will break. And so I would have to find some sort of way of reconstructing hundreds of episodes of JSON files to a new way of like uploading, and all of this is because I'm not self-hosting, of course, which would solve this. But man, that's so many other problems to do that. And so I was thinking like maybe I can find a way of, being able to automatically do this with some Python script. If I number my images in a certain way, upload them to somewhere in a certain way, I can have this automatic system going on. And what I found out was I was using ChatGPT a bit, and I was going, if I can kind of get it to do what I want, it's taking me a bit of time, but I think this is where I didn't get any inherent pleasure from learning Python, from typing on my keyboard. I found it actually frustrating. Whereas learning German or Spanish, there is this aspect of being able to go out and use it with people, and there's a thrill I find of hearing a word which I've just learned and being like, I know that word. Like, I don't know the context. I was listening to this one show, and I just learned the word for sausages, like Würstchen, and they were talking about Angela Merkel, and they kept on throwing sausages in. I was just hearing like Angela Merkel and Würstchen. I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? And I thought I was going crazy. I ended up looking at the transcript later, and yeah, sure enough, there was like this funny thing where there was some interaction with her eating sausages, and I was like, okay, so I did get it. Like,
that's fun.
Yeah. So I get some pleasure from that, whereas from the coding and stuff, it was like, man, I don't need another introverted activity on my own. I need to get out more.
Feel it. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there's so when it comes to code, I mean, coding's not for not everybody's going to enjoy it at all. But I think there's an aspect to it where you have. I think there's a couple of things. Number one, you'll never learn a programming language unless you have a project that you yourself really need and use, that you can maintain over time. So, like you need to find, I'm not talking about you necessarily, but just people that are interested in coding need to find a thing that solves a problem for them that they're going to use frequently, and like maybe like daily or weekly or monthly at least. And this thing solves a problem in their life, even if this is some silly little issue. And then that way they have a reason to use it, to code it, and then they have a reason to maintain it over time and add new features and that kind of thing. It could be something super silly. Like I did a project a few years ago where I had I had a new HVAC system in our house, and I wanted to monitor when the temperature outside got below a certain level and turn the system off so that we're, like certain hours of the day and this kind of thing. So, so I wrote that and I ended up writing in I think it was PHP. And so I wrote this software, and it used Amazon's backend and all this kind of stuff. But it was fun. I mean, I maintained this thing, kept adding features to it over the course of 6 months, and but it gave me a reason to keep coming back and learning because if you don't, I mean, it's just like any other programming language, just like a real language. If you don't use it, you're gonna forget it. You have to use it on a frequent basis. And so, there's that aspect of it. But I tend to go a little bit further. I think that's why a lot of people like open source, and it's true for me. When I put I tend almost every single thing I write, in my spare time, is open source, and so I'll put it on GitHub or some public place. And once you get in the habit of that, like, it gives you a little bit of excitement because now your code is out there. It's sort of like blogging or whatever so it's like you're putting your content out there in the world. Other people can comment on it. Other people can submit changes to it and suggest changes. Like, it sort of gamifies the whole thing a little bit. And I find excitement from that. It's almost like doing a live show. Like, you've now put a piece of yourself out there, and you're going to get judged for it and this kind of thing. But I think a lot of open source people, I think they kind of have that same mentality.
Yeah. I've kind of become from being. I think I was saying this on the Sam Sethi chat I had with him. I'm a reluctant geek. I struggle with technology, and so, but finding out about open source kind of, much later than maybe most people are. Well, not most people. Than people who are perhaps into technology. In my 30s,
you got sucked into the vortex.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I get it though. I'm 100% on board with it. I think it's awesome. And which is so much appreciated that you and Adam have created this open source amazing thing. Like, I think I said it the first time we met, but 1.5 years ago was maybe couldn't even convey just how much you guys are my favorite show by far.
Thanks, man.
So much of my time is dedicated to keeping up with it, implementing it, trying to make my podcast better. And so I just really want to thank you for everything that you've done, man. It's it's super awesome.
Oh, love it. It's hard to believe it's been like coming up on 3 years.
Yeah,
Isn't that weird? It's so strange, man. It's like, it feels like maybe it's the pandemic or something. I don't know. It made time seem to go faster.
Yeah, it definitely 2021 and 2022 blurred for me. There was a big mixing of those 2 years. Yeah.
I remember 2020 more than I remember 2021 and 2022 combined.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
That's weird, man. That's weird. Some strange psychology.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of my friends and family and whatnot are traveling again. I think that's like a good kind of breakup. A lot of them have been going to Japan. I'm sort of looking at maybe next year going to Europe. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Me and my wife's our 25th wedding anniversary is next year, and so we're actively trying to figure out where we're going to go. We've talked about Japan or Europe. I'm not sure.
Have you been to
any suggestions
before?
No.
Okay. I mean, Japan's an amazing place. It's the only place. Tokyo is the only big city I've been in where I enjoyed being in a big city, because I've kind of been to a fair few, here in Australia, and then Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Santiago, whatnot. And Tokyo is just fascinating for the different subcultures you can find just by going to different neighborhoods around. Really, really cool. Okay. I haven't heard many people saying bad stuff about Japan because it's just so bizarre, but in a safe, friendly way. it's
probably a pretty short flight for you, right? It's not that far away.
I mean, everything's far from Australia. It's 9 hours, which is a short flight.
Okay, yeah, that's not too bad. It's like 26 hours for me or something like that.
Yeah, big one. Yeah. How far is Europe away from Alabama?
It's not too bad. I think we can get to Frankfurt in like 8 hours, something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's definitely doable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, I was kind of thinking, this is a 25th anniversary. I'm like, well, maybe we should just go someplace that's like super far away, because like the big one, like the one we may not get back to for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, Japan's a good one for that. It's Especially, yeah. I wouldn't even say especially if you love technology, but it does have that aspect of it's just so bizarre. Everything there is just so
Yeah.
so different.
Have
From
you ever been to Vietnam?
No,
I've heard good things about that.
yeah, Vietnam sounds like a really cool place as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Australians go to Vietnam, so I've heard
Oh,
lots of
really?
good
Okay.
things about it. Yeah, yeah, because Asia is kind of our doorstep, so the yeah, a lot travel there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
yeah. I'll be keen. Maybe we can. When is it that you're looking at
Next summer,
next? What's summer for you?
24.
Um,
2024 next summer. So they'd be like, I'm
what
sorry,
time
it's
of year?
summer for me. It's winter for you. So that's like, it'd be like August of
Okay.
2024.
Yeah. If you're in Germany, or like Europe, I will probably be around there.
Oh, really? Cool. Okay,
Because I would
we'll
definitely go
coordinate then.
during my winter.
Okay. Yeah, we'll coordinate.
Yeah, definitely. To finish off a bit of history, the Podsage. Do you know where that came from? The nickname.
I think it was on Sam and James's show. I think
It was. So I was looking this up last night, and so the last time we chatted we released was 7th of September 2021. I had James on very, very shortly before or after that. And when I was chatting with him, he casually referenced you as the pod bro. And I was like, what? I've never heard of this before. And it was because I'd missed the episode that he'd released that day, or that that kind of prior week. And then I chatted with you, and I sent in a boostergram, and it's really funny because if you go to 16th of September 2021, Pod News Weekly, and it was review with Oscar. And about 44 minutes in is when they have the boostergram section, and you sent in a boostergram being like, oh, as the pod bro, and then you had something. And then the very next one afterwards was me going, I think we need to change the name to Podsage, or Dave's just too wise and too calm to be a bro. And so you're
the culprit for that.
I am. I'm 100% the culprit. And I remember when you and Adam were talking about boostergrams, and the first person who came up with the moniker for that. And Adam was like, I need to write this down somewhere, because this is the kind of thing that gets debated 10 years later, much like who came up with the name podcasting. And because people have faulty memories. I think they said this. And I caught Sam Sethi in an episode trying to claim that he came up with Podsage, and I was like, no.
You called him out.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is it's recorded. It's recorded down in their show, and then if I really want to, I can probably find out where I sent that from and get the I don't know what sort of record it is. That is it TLV? Or TLV I could probably get that and be like, look,
I brought receipts.
Yeah, exactly. I brought receipts. But I'm glad that name stuck and not Podbro. Yeah, that would have been awesome.
The bro thing that's not a good look.
No, not at all.
That's funny.
You can thank me for that. And I always like to end off. Is there anything I can do for you, for Adam, for anything that you guys need that could make podcasting 2.0 better?
No, man, you do so much already. Just keep podcasting, so I don't have to stop listening. Because I love you guys, and I get into I've gotten my rotation in podcasting, like in my podcast app, has gotten so out of whack. I've got to go in there and clean up stuff, because I've gotten into that same thing that I'm sure it happens to you, where people are like, hey, listen to this show, listen to this show, listen to this show. Before you know it, you've got like 37 podcasts.
Yeah.
And there's no way. I mean,
27 or 28 just on Fountain. And that's only, I only use half of them. I only use Fountain half the time. 26 shows. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to parse it out into like different playlists. So I have my, I'm actively getting it back under control now.
Nice.
So, but just keep doing it, man. I'm looking forward to it. Tell Juan congratulations.
Yeah, of course, we'll do. And it's
He's going to be a tired man for a while.
Oh yeah, it's really going to be interesting seeing what were we talking about before, like the technology, the social media of taking photos of your kids and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like how is he going to be able to refrain from the wanting to whip it out the phone at every single moment, which
it's hard, man.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
It's hard.
Yeah, and look, on the opposite side of the spectrum, when I was traveling, I took very little photos, and I kind of have these big gaps from when I was in Chile or in Guatemala where I'm like, damn, I don't have many photos. It would have been nice to capture some of myself at least at that time. And so, yeah, there's the opposite spectrum as well, where it's like, man, it'd be nice to have some.
Yeah. I think it's like I think it's just balance. Yeah, it's balance. You take your phone out, snap a shot, and then be done. Be okay with it.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't need if you're trying to repeat shots. I had an ex who did this. She needed the perfect photo. That's not so great.
Have you did you say that you've been to the US?
I'm only traveling through to Japan, actually. So no, I've been in Atlanta and Seattle airports, I think. So only the airports.
Like, there's the Grand Canyon in Arizona is like, it's a perfect, pictures are useless.
Yeah.
Descriptions are useless. Movies are useless. It is completely a waste of everybody's time to try to show them the Grand Canyon until you stand on the south rim of that thing and look at it. It's you're dumbfounded at the scale of and the beauty of this thing. It will just blow you away. And the pictures are completely worthless. And it's like, don't even bother. Just stop trying to take a picture.
Yeah. When I was in Guatemala, you can go to this place called there's a volcano there called Fuego, literally fire, and it's a kind of active volcano, and there's a dormant one right next to it, and you can kind of sleep on the dormant one, watching this active one. The crazy stuff you do as a backpacker. And in the morning you can go up and see the sunrise. And I almost missed it because I'm not a morning person. I was like, I don't want to get up and do this, but everyone's getting up. So I'm like, screw it. Last minute, chucked all my stuff, went out. And it was the first time I'd ever seen green in the sunrise before. There was a color green.
Oh.
And you cannot describe. There's no photos can capture that. It's just, you have to see that for yourself.
It's just, and now it's part of you. Now it's a memory.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we'll leave it at there. Dave, thank you so much for your precious time and your precious energy. Everything you're doing is amazing, and it's completely transformed my life. And I just want to express that gratitude and just you keep it up as well. Don't tire yourself out.
Thanks, man. Y'all have a good one. It was always great talking to you anytime.